So yeah, we're gonna learn about passing, transness, and assimilation. The Assimilationist, or on the unexpected cost of passing as a trans woman. The trouble of finding my true self in the beauty aisles, by Emily St. James. This is a VOTS article. I'm glad you sound comfy and warm, Fanta. Hope you're nice and cozy too. Also suggest another comfy throne suggestion too. Comfy dysphoria onesie. I see. Thank you. She was heartbroken over Regan losing the Sans and Setsy Man thing. Royalists are in toxic pro-social relationship with parasocial relationship with an old woman who wouldn't care about you. Yup. Laughing about their deaths is one of the few ways aristocrats give back to the world. In March 2018, a handful of days after I came out to my therapist as a trans woman, I decided to buy a razor to shave my legs. For the first time in my life, I was aware that my legs had hair on them, and I was at once irritated by that hair and a little anxious about it. I didn't know why, but I wanted it gone. Even though I had a perfectly good razor I used to shave my facial hair, I felt strongly that I needed something pink or purple to tackle the thicket on my legs. So, staying there in the Target razor aisle looking for something functional but also cute, my anxiety growing as I was sure people were looking at me and seeing my secret true self and judging me accordingly. I found myself torn. The pink razor, marked as explicitly for a woman, was so lovely and sleek, but it was also functionally the same product as a black and neon green razor for manly dudes right next to it. And the pink razor was $1 more expensive. Intellectually, I knew the pink tats existed because I had spent most of my adult life reading up on women's issues. Gee, wonder why? But this was my first encounter with it in the wild. With the fact that you could want so badly to feel a sense of belonging that you would let capitalism gouge you over and over again. I wanted so desperately to indicate my essential womanness that I was willing to pay extra for it. Screwing up my courage, I grabbed the razor, keeping my head down at the cash register, ready to say that it was for my wife. Should anybody ask. Newly out trans people are terrified of the gender police, who generally don't exist except in our heads. I disagree with that one to a degree. That pink razor was a piece of crap, and within 6 months, I had to replace it. My old men's razor, which I still use to shave what facial hair I have left, is going strong years after use. In the months thereafter, money seemingly poured out of me. It was so expensive to be a woman. I found myself having to buy an entirely new wardrobe, one I'm still struggling to fill out here and there. I needed new shoes, I needed makeup. Buying all this stuff in aggregate was expensive, of course, but each individual item was expensive in and of itself. It was as if I was experiencing the market pressures of being a teen girl in the space of about 3 months. Can a man spend a lot of money on clothing? Of course, but he also has many affordable options. Finding such options in the women's section was its own challenge. It was as if I was experiencing the market pressures of being a teen girl in the space of about 3 months instead of over several years. Now, we've read this article already before, but I will mention spoilers, at least in a sense, because I am fairly sure that she didn't try the things that we recommend to especially newly out and exploring trans people. clothing swaps and like secondhand shopping. And that is because she probably doesn't need to financially. Because yes, it is expensive, but she can afford it. The transgender police, which only exists in our heads and tattoos. Even beyond that, there's the cost of laser hair removal and electrolysis to get rid of facial hair. There are regular sessions with a therapist who specializes in gender dysphoria. There was a crash course in voice training. An attempt to coach my old rumble into a reasonable alto. Changing my name cost almost $500, and a printout of the paperwork proving my name was changed was another $50. There are so many expenses to come, including surgeries and more documentation of my identity, and so on and so forth. It's expensive and exhausting, and it will never end. And yet, I never asked myself why I'm doing all this. I just am. I need to. There's a word that comes up in trans circles often. I think it probably describes me, or at least people have used it to refer to me at times when they think I don't know they're doing it. Assimilationist. The best way to describe an assimilationist is to describe myself. So here's what I'm wearing right now. On a chilly California day at the start of the year, my hair, on which I use somewhat expensive lightening shampoo to coat it towards a dirty blonde, hangs just past my chin. On my nose sit round-framed blue glasses, $500. I'm wearing a full face of makeup, and my first visit to Sephora ran me $250. Good fucking god. And I have a pink sweater, a gray undershirt, black tights, and a ruffled black skirt. Around $120 all told, mostly from Target. Cap this off with some dark purple running shoes, $75, and you've got the whole look. This outfit would not seem out of place on just about any woman in her 30s who works in the media. It's a solid everyday look when I don't have to make an on-camera appearance. I have a more expensive wardrobe from when I do. That's precisely the point of the assimilationist claim. As trans people, we're supposed to complicate the gender binary, not uphold it. By trying my damnedest not to stand out but to blend in, to tilt whatever little equation you run in your head when you see me away from man and towards woman. I'm propagating a system that hurts both trans people and women disproportionately, via everything from broad systemic violence to the relatively minor sin of the pink tats. This actually reminds me of a tweet that I would show if it hadn't been deleted by the author, that we've been seeing making the rounds lately, and I'm pretty sure it got deleted by the author because they probably felt ganged up on, because it was a trans and or non-binary person talking about like kind of this whole concept in general. They're basically talking about or rather they were asking a question in a way that felt really aggressive for some people, where it's like, how can you be non-binary and not like learn to push against the homogenous capitalist, imperialist, misogynist culture that exists? How can you be non-binary and uphold like these beliefs? How can you not unlearn them in the process of like becoming your true self? And a lot of people's problem with that was, and I think is a good point, and obviously would be the counter to in this article's talking about assimilationism, is that you are who you are, and there are people who uphold the status quo, but they're still trans. Like, that doesn't stop it. And like, as much as I would love for every trans person to get a fucking union membership and a communist manifesto mailed to them. Not every trans person or non-binary person has the same politics. There are pick-me's. There are people who legitimately believe that, for example, that you can't be translated dysphoria and it needs to be medicalized and stuff like that. There's a lot of different ways to think about yourself and society and the world at large and still be trans. And that's not to say that people who are assimilationists are necessarily enemies, because not everyone who blends in, i.e. who goes stealth, is someone who is doing that because they hate being trans. There are people who are like that, but there are plenty of people who do it for safety. There are plenty of people who, like this article we'll soon get into, that passing so hard that you're essentially passing so hard that you're essentially I literally just said the word. Passing so hard that you're essentially stealth can sometimes be a symptom of luck, of like good genetics, and being in a good financial position. Or one or the other. We've known poor trans people who pass pretty well, like less than a year on hormones. Or even pre-hormones. It happens. And you're allowed to be happy and like do things that you feel will give you the maximum amount of validation without hurting others, right? And it's definitely a more passive thing, because even if a person isn't necessarily worried about anti-trans violence, that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone wants and that no one definitely needs to be super loud about themselves being trans. We, however, kind of do, because we're black and trans and we don't pass that well. So we kind of, if we don't push the status quo, then we can't live comfortably in this world. The status quo will not accept us. Not to mention that we're black, and even cis black women face the shitty parts of transphobia, and not even just them. There are plenty of like white cis butch women who get ran out of fucking women's bathrooms because people think they're trans. Got my headphones to work. Welcome back, Noel. I mean, not every black person is against white supremacy, but I mean, there's some black white supremacists. Unfortunately. Okay, sorry. We're late. We're stimming and post associating over the cute character designs in Toontown Corporate Clash. Oh, keep meaning to look that up, because the fact that Toontown's a thing again is like super cool. And welcome. It's good to see you, Stinks. Here's the thing that gives me a thrill, but probably shouldn't. It's working. I can count the number of times I've been misgendered in the past 6 months on 2 hands. And it now happens so infrequently that I can chalk it up to someone misspeaking far more often than a deliberate attempt to make me feel like shit. I've even had a few encounters where someone was shocked to learn that I was trans, not cis. I've developed camouflage. My justification for my style from the first has always been that if you Google my name, the very first page of results is filled with stories about how I'm trans, even as I increasingly pass, quote unquote, for a cis woman, I can't escape the fact that I became a vaguely public figure and spent more than a decade publishing journalism and a book under a man's name. Even if I am invisibly trans in a crowd, I am visibly trans once you know who I am. Because unlike so many trans women, I was already visible when I transitioned. Still, my transition has gone much, much better than I expected it to. I had certain advantages in this regard. From economics, I have much more money than the majority of trans women. To race, white trans people have the same built-in societal advantages as white people in general. To geography, California presents few structural barriers where an adult wants to transition. Fun fact, Los Angeles, California is where we transitioned. I also had advantages when it came to my genetic code. My testosterone levels have been low my whole life, so my body was already fairly androgynous. It didn't take that much estrogen to shift androgyny towards traditional femininity. See also this other thing. The post doesn't exist anymore, so I'm not gonna click on it. Many trans women have few or even none of my advantages. They cannot escape the fact that when they go out into society as themselves, they are constantly visibly trans, with all the horrors that can bring. They can't pay to eliminate their beard shadow. They can't buy feminine clothes to fit their frames. They can't spend countless hours training their voices to sound just so. And not all trans women are traditionally feminine. Many prefer looks that might skew towards androgyny or butchness. And this is just trans women. I haven't even touched on trans men or non-binary people, on gender fluidity, on those who are agender. Our goal as trans people should be to normalize all the identities and in doing so push back against an unfairly limiting gender binary that puts cis men and women too. That hurts cis men and women too. That binary imprisons all of us within a limited set of ideas of who we can be and what we are capable of. And many of the rules that govern it are arbitrary and invented by a society built by cis men for the benefit of cis men. Spit those true facts. This is all true. Though I think that this also touches on a thing that like we've been wrestling with. Well, I guess we don't technically wrestle with it so much anymore. It mostly wrestles with us since we first came out. I think we've talked about it before that when we first started transitioning, when we first came out to ourselves, one of the things that we thought about with like how we would change, not so much our transition and like sort of femininity or whatever, but more like our attitude about the world. The trans people we knew were just so angry, but it wasn't even that they weren't happy people necessarily. I mean, many weren't. Many were very, very depressed, but more like argumentative, aggressive, and we worried about becoming a bitch. Moreover, we worried about becoming a communist. And although we were a liberal, a left-leaning liberal at that, we felt as though it would be disingenuous to become a communist or whatever just because we were trans. Not realizing that there's an overlap. It's like a Venn diagram. It's not that becoming trans makes you more likely to be left-leaning or support more left-leaning policies arbitrarily. It's that in supporting those things, it will reflect a better life for you and the people you tend to care about, you and your loved ones. Because trans people are often poor, because trans people often have mental health issues that are aggravated by or even are, I don't want to say caused by, but in being queer, people will mistreat you even if you don't yourself know you are queer yet. Happened to us. So like, people have inbuilt trauma, um, physical and emotional, right? There's so many ways that someone is gonna be disenfranchised. So if you are trans in a general sense, you're gonna benefit more from progressive policies. And we didn't realize that at the time. And we also didn't realize that the reason we saw so many very aggressive quote unquote trans people, or trans people who are essentially just willing to, hold space for themselves and not back down, was just a thing that a lot of people learned that they need to do. It's not the only way to survive in this world, but it's the way a lot of people have to, because if you don't make space for yourself, then no one will. Or they'll actively take space away from you. And that sucks. The new Toontown has a section in the speed chat dedicated to pronouns. Ooh. Trans people and radical leftism have overlapped because once you figure out that those things society tells you is bad aren't wrong, the whole thing starts to unravel. Oh yes, very easily. Very easily. Even in North California, it's hard to find trans people to talk to. Probably also because I'm not so great at socialization. Oh, hey Orange, how are you doing? I'm sorry you have trouble with that. We lived in LA, so Southern California. I recognize that it's not so metropolitan in Northern Cal, as far as I am aware. And NorCal can be a lot more, or I should say a lot less progressive. So I feel like there are probably a lot of trans people not calling a lot of attention to themselves. I would recommend, however, you look for a support group in your area. Or at the very least, the LGBT center. There might be events and stuff. Okay, I agree to all of the above, but I also love to be traditionally feminine women. Womanhood and women in general just make more sense to me than anything else I've ever tried. My attempts at male bonding over the years glistened with flop sweat. The gender binary makes me feel more like me. I want to eliminate it. I also want to hang on to some of it. It feels like I just got here. I think that actually echoes something that I hear like cis women talking about, especially the ones who are either TERFs or skeptical of pushing against the concept of like gender roles and stuff, because some people will say I want to abolish gender, and a lot of people will be like, no, but I like my gender. I can I have mine, please? and a lot of people get defensive about it. And I'm not calling this person a TERF or anything. I don't think that she is. But not even but. I want to say that the thing that she's talking about reflects a real fear that I think is reasonable for a lot of people to have when they hear someone say, I want to destroy gender. For context and prosperity, I do not want to destroy gender. I want gender to be free. I am a gender communist. Which is funny. Drizzle particularly encouraged me to read this article on stream because I am one of the few binary trans femmes in our system. Shit, one of the only binary trans people in our system. And I'm not even necessarily fully traditionally feminine. Only one of my 3 outfits for my live 2D model doesn't wear like pants technically. And the only one that doesn't is a cosplay. For example. Not to say that I don't like dresses, because dress go spinny, yes, yes. But it's complicated. But also, I identify it with being like rambunctious, and it's kind of like I would not describe myself as a tomboy, but cargo short shorts and a nice comfy t-shirt make me very happy. I am fine wearing gender neutral clothing, but also wouldn't mind something frilly every now and again. Maybe even half the time, I don't know. I don't really front enough to know. But that'll change eventually. But I do really love the color pink, i.e. my fucking fur color. So I definitely lean into some traditionally feminine things. Oh heck, thank you for reminding me of an LGBT centers. There is one nearby, but I forgot about it, lol. Thanks, Fluff. You welcome. I'm helpful. The pushback of trans folks against gender abolition is so unfortunate. Rolls eyes. I think framing gender abolition as people getting to, like, not have their gender policed and to, like, you know, get rid of, like, say, toxic masculinity and the pressure for femme people to have to do certain things, and mass people. But I feel like I feel like the patriarchy is much more stringent on what it means to be a woman than it is for what it means to be a man in a lot of ways. For context, I do want to destroy gender. People can be a mass person or a femme person, anywhere in between, for or beyond whatever they want. I don't mind people wanting to be a man or a woman, a girl or a boy. I just don't want those to be the only options. And I don't want people to get bullied because they don't pick those options, or to be bullied because they're not man enough or woman enough. I remember very early in you following us, Becky, that that actually came up, that you do want to abolish gender. We do not. Or at least, as far as I know, none of my headmates do. We want gender to be a free buffet. Pink gender cutie stuff is really cute. Meow. Being in a system where some of our headmates are traditionally femme and some are less attached to the typical concept of gender binary is a funny situation for us. Oh, well, yeah, I totally get that, Orange. Like I said, I'm one of the only binary fluffs in general, and I am and it's weird for me because I skew possibly the most towards traditional femininity, but I still don't land within a lot of the stereotypes. Did you see our last message? Nope, I'll read it now. We are neither communists nor capitalists. We're more advocates of a syndicalist barter system of practicality and trading of actual things rather than a fucked up system based on useless paper shards and misinterpreted tales from inbred winos. That's quite a take. I feel you. Sometimes I get scared about having such a system though, and this is actually something that we think about quite often. if people, if like, if there was no money, then how will we get people to make art for us? Because we imagine that people would just make art for them and their friends, and that was it. And there was nothing we could offer in trade that would matter to most people. And shit, even under the current system, we have that problem. Like, there are people who we love art from that don't do commissions, but do art trades. But our art isn't good enough for an art trade. For example. And of course, there are artists who are really good and like bang out a bunch of work that we know, like, as soon as there's like, oh yeah, no rent, food's free, like, no none of this bullshit, we have a feeling that they just be like, art? I'll draw for myself, fuck off everyone else. Like, we know that it wouldn't be a thing. And so that makes us sad. And it's like, I don't have the spoons to learn to draw fast enough to be able to get art at the same caliber of people that I would want to get art from. But then again, that worry is kind of... It's kind of spoiled. It's kind of a spoiled kind of worry. Not the worst thing in the world. Still will make me sad though. I want people to be whatever they want, girl, boy, or any gender in between or off the spectrum. And I want that gender to exist, but not to be policed of what you have to, or what you have to be in that gender. Mood, very mood. Respect. Gabricosmos. Okay, I got it. Gabricosmos. Welcome to stream, Gabricosmos. Hope you're having a good one. You've come into some high tier gender convos. Hope you enjoy your time. Syndicalism and communism are similar, but we don't consider ourselves communists. We do support communism though. I think in general we are anarcho-communist. So we are definitely communism, yes. We just want to return to the days of trading furs and such for goods instead of relying on useless symbols. Yeah, like the amount of energy that goes into like money in the first place is already like really shitty. Practical things like food, crafts, random trinkets and such. It would be neat. I did this drawing. Can I get some cans of food? That'd be nice. Okay, yeah. No, we've thought about that too, Fanta, about art. This is why we kind of feel like the solution to aim for is to not abolish money entirely, but to divorce it from access to essentials of life. Yes. I am very... we're on the same page in that regard. And I mean, to one degree, to talk about there not being any money anymore is already like very radical. Is already a very radical position. So on one hand, it's like, oh, if I could have the dream, I'd have a hard time justifying not pushing for it. But the only reason I could justify it is like the cool things. And it's like, what am I gonna trade for a PS5, you know? Like, the whole, like, we have such a society just based on this now. It's like, it's gonna be really hard to pull away, and I want to see it happen in my lifetime. I really hope we can see it in our lifetime. I think, was it healthcare is a right? I think internet is a right. Housing is a right. Food is a right. Like, gosh, so many rights. And the world has too many wrongs. I'm closer to communist than capitalist, but that is a bit too far off for me of my ideal society, where everyone has a baseline, everything they need to live. Food, water, housing, everything you want, more you can work for and buy it. I commented a little bit earlier about one of my girlfriend's fears of gender roles being eliminated, which they don't exactly need to be fully eradicated, just not enforced on everyone in my opinion. Oh, yeah, I have that thought too. But I would find it hard to believe that we could ever live in a world where someone's like, girls don't exist anymore, you're not allowed to be a girl. Like, I feel like that's... I wouldn't worry about that part. Syndicalists have always been close partners with anarcho-communists. I remember reading that the Russian Black Army had a syndicalist branch. I'm not an expert though. I've been meaning to read more about the idea. Yes, this is true. We're very supportive of anarcho-communism. It's not just our main view, but it's just not our main view. We're not against it in any regard. Yes. Money is a useful thing for trade. Just don't make it essential for the essentials of life. Money abolition is a very complex subject. I could go either way myself. Whew. I didn't realize we would go down this rabbit hole. This is a fair take. We just prefer a full-on barter system, but money is an option rather than a necessity is also nice, especially in regards to trading for stuff that is more esoteric in terms of worth. Oh yeah. I mean, stuff like food and clothing are kind of easy in terms of establishing worth. And then there's also just like the concept of art. And if someone devalues your art enough, then like they could kind of railroad you into not taking anything worthwhile for it. Kind of like trading Yu-Gi-Oh cards. When someone convinces you that their blue eyes white dragon is like way more worthwhile than your allure of darkness. I don't know. Exactly, yeah. Honestly, we figured that even if money could be abolished, that like humans will immediately reinvent some kind of universal unit of trade. Yeah, that's a mood. Okay, we're gonna finish the article. And then we're gonna get to video games. The thing about self-acceptance is that when you're just getting used to it, you become an easy mark. The first time I went to Sephora, I spent way more on makeup than I ever thought possible because the salesperson who helped me made me feel so good about myself. From the second she learned my name, she called me Emily, even though I was in full guy mode. She used she, her pronouns. She told me I was pretty. I plunked down $250 and would have spent well over $300 if she had managed to talk me into a $70 foundation. My wife saved me on that one. Fun fact, when we first got into makeup, and we literally only fell out of makeup because we couldn't afford it anymore, we probably spent about that much to get into it. If not, at least $150. Especially when you have nothing, like brushes and stuff. Brushes and stuff are so expensive. Come think about it, I don't think we have brushes now. Damn, I want brushes. It is nice to paint yourself. It's a good stem. Makeup is a good stem. Don't at me. To be clear, none of this is the salesperson's fault. None of it's my fault either. This is just how society is designed to function. And if you come out as trans later in life, it's so you'll suddenly start careening downhill into a newer, truer gender without some of the guardrails to snap into place when you grow up cis and figure out the way society tries to exploit you on the grounds of gender. Well, that's a good point. It definitely works both ways. For example, there's trans masculine and trans men who do fall into some of the traps of toxic masculinity, especially on the peer pressure variety. Because, like, if you're getting a whole bunch of acceptance and you're told that, like, oh, like, you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z, then it's hard not to feel like you want to keep that gravy train of euphoria going. It's not like any of us are immune to these capitalist pressures. These are distinct economic expressions of womanhood and manhood. They're meant to help us all find a sense of belonging and centeredness in our own genders by spending money on products to affirm them. We can be aware of this manipulation and even roll our eyes at it and still be susceptible to it. This isn't just a gender thing either. As a furry, I have pressure to have a Sona, spend money on getting art of the Sona, and to some degree eventually get a fursuit. Hadn't even thought about getting a fursuit for my Sona in particular until literally this moment, and I don't know how I feel about that. The problem, I suppose, is that I like being an assimilationist. I like it when people just assume I'm a woman without a second glance. I like it when I don't have to explain myself. I like that if I go to buy a pink razor that's more expensive than a man's razor now, I never feel like I have to come up with an excuse for why I might be buying it. This makes me feel more affirmed as an individual, but it also makes me feel like a shitty member of the trans community. The larger political project of dismantling the terrible structures of capitalist patriarchy continue apace. And here I am, cooing over my friend giving me a bracelet that spells out my name in Morse code. Want to win a trans girl's heart? Give her jewelry that involves her name somehow. She'll be your friend for life. This will probably work on me. I'm not gonna lie. A sketch for a really nice meal because we like cooking as an art. Oh yeah, I also forgot, we are pretty good at cooking. We actually cooked like right before stream started. So, I mean, we can quote unquote provide value. But I guess also like our worry about like the bartering system also is inherently tied to how we operate under capitalism and not feeling like we can do enough because as a disabled person we've found our niche, but our niche isn't profitable enough for us to sustain ourselves completely off of it. But we're very fortunate to be where we are. We have people that support us enough that we can live. But like we're constantly thinking about the fact that like if we didn't have that, then like we'd kind of die. I cannot ignore that in my attempts to slide headfirst into womanhood, I am more or less appeasing a society that is set up to favor cis people. I'm especially doing a disservice to my non-binary siblings, whose very existence challenge the idea that there are men and women, and that's it. I'm a safe version of transness, corporatized and commodified, fit for mass market consumption. I do not challenge you to rethink the gender binary in any real way. But affirmation is not a thing that can be given to us. It's something we nurture and grow from within, and it comes in as many shapes and sizes as there are people. Gender is a social construct, except for all the ways in which it sure seems like it's deeply ingrained within my very self. And if you tell me I look pretty today, I will smile and thank you for the compliment. I fucking socialize makeup too. I definitely like the idea of getting together with a bunch of people and like doing each other's makeup. Never really did that. I'd love to talk political theory more, but I don't want to derail the stream. Lol. Or Etsy. If it's relevant to what we're talking about, sprinkle it in, but I do like that you're respecting the stream and not trying to derail it too much. It's true. There's social pressure involved in all these aspects, and it's easy to fall into the social pressure when you're getting euphoria from these modes of exploration. Oh, fuck yes! Shit, as a gamer is probably one of the biggest ones because gamer is a commodified identity to like the utmost degree. Oh, you don't have a PS5 yet? Oh, I see. For me, it's actually a sore point because we can't, even if we had the money, we couldn't justify getting a PS5, even though my Sona is a Linebax and it's based off of Rivet from the new Ratchet and Clank game that's only for PS5. So like my gamer identity and my furry identity are wrapped up in fucking in the commodity of gaming. And it sucks. There's just something about cooking that attracts a lot of babs, huh? I mean, I know plenty of babs who can't cook or don't think they cook well. But at the same time, I don't think you're wrong either. I mean, it's kind of cool if you grew up being like, yeah, I got my little easy bake oven, or wanting an easy bake oven, and like making a game out of cooking, and then you quote unquote grow up, and then it's like, oh, cooking, I can do cooking, I did the game cooking. The way to a bab's heart is through their stomach. Well, I mean, in the whole kidulthood thing of like easy foods was a mac and cheese and dino nuggies, stuff like that. Like, I could totally see that too, even though you're joking. Honestly, yeah, you're right. It's pretty horse shit. Mood. Fucking commoditized identity. This is not all that different from how cis women might navigate the world, or so I'm told. We're all constantly making our own compromises with some feminine ideal that was created for us at some point. An amalgam of a million different ideas of what it means to be a woman that is internally inconsistent and makes no sense, yet holds unattainable appeal for way too many of us. Men do this too, of course. Maybe I run so hard towards becoming that idealized girl because I know I can never be her due to the circumstances of my birth. Maybe if I run hard enough, I might get there and suddenly wake up a suburban mother of two in Oklahoma, Nebraska. Maybe I wear so many dresses because I love wearing dresses. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. There are reasons to blend in beyond self-acceptance. Namely, the world is already cruel, and being trans only ramps up that cruelty. If you can find a way to escape that cruelty, shouldn't you? Let me give you an example. While riding the train from downtown Los Angeles to Santa Monica recently, I became dimly aware that the man standing right in front of me was shouting a homophobic slur at someone sitting behind me, over and over. This other person, whom I could not see, begged him to stop, in a voice deep enough for me to assume masculinity. I was wrong. When the target of the man's slurs launched herself at him, I saw she was wearing a woman's top and skirt. She had long, messy hair. She windmilled down the aisle of the train and tried to land a punch or slap something out on the man. She failed, while he dropped her to the floor, flailing at her with his fists and feet, mostly failing to connect. Eventually, they were separated by others on the train. As the woman pulled away, I felt the lurch of recognizing a fellow trans woman, albeit one who does not pass for cis, whether she wants to or not. I cannot know her situation, but I have seen variations on her in every support group I've been to, and every young scared woman DMing me on Twitter to ask if she too might be trans, as though I had the power to lift a terrible curse. While she retreated, other passengers laughed, that exhausted, relieved laugh that arises in any situation where people who've just been through a tense situation are simply glad to have gotten out unscathed. But I felt something else in that laughter. Something beyond, what the fuck was that? I figured it out as I exited the train at the next stop, in front of some teenage boys who were still laughing about the altercation. "You see that dude?" one of them said. "He was in a skirt." They howled at the thought, while I was 2 steps ahead of them, wearing a dress. They were oblivious to my presence and to my transness. I passed because I assimilated. Here's the part where I tell you that I turned around and told them to shut up, risking the freedom of passing and do the right thing. Or here's the part where I tell you I found the woman in the crowd of people exiting the train and walked her to wherever she was headed. Or here's the part where I tell you I resolved to do better, to push more against the structure of the binary. But I did none of those things. I simply quickened my pace and walked to my appointment. Assimilation affords me the privilege of not getting involved, of doing the easy thing instead of the right thing. It also afforded the teens walking behind me the privilege of laughing at a cruel joke, rather than trying to push back against it. And it afforded all of my fellow passengers the privilege of rolling our eyes when the man started yelling slurs at the woman. Rather than trying to stop him, assimilation lets me be seen, but also not be seen. I can disappear, and in disappearing, some part of me evaporates. Could I have said something? Certainly. Should I have said something? I don't know. I keep wanting to call myself a coward, but I am also right to feel scared. What if somebody had found me out? What might have happened then? The border between my safety and something horrible is so tenuous, and societal norms dictate that I am the one who's asked to enforce it, not everybody who might dare to cross it. This is insufficient as an apology to the woman on the train. I'm sorry about what happened to you, and I'm sorry I didn't stop it. I'm sorry literally anybody else who could have didn't shout down that man. I hope that you're okay. I have no excuses. I blend in because I love to wear dresses. I blend in because I love to go out with my women friends and have no one bat an eye when they see us together. And I blend in because I feel power in living as my true self. Assimilation is powerful and affirming, but it's also a bind that traps me, tempting me into closing the door behind me to all the trans people who cannot assimilate or do not want to. It's a false choice between the allure of becoming the power of speaking out against injustice. It's the false choice between the allure of belonging and the power of speaking out against injustice. Early in my transition, a trans guy friend told me that sometimes trans people are so aware of their individual privileges that they become all they can see. And I didn't understand what he was trying to say at the time. I do now. But my friend said something else too, which is that one's own happiness is not a sin. Assimilating, blending in, is not a choice I made for safety reasons or even aesthetic ones. It's an expression of who I really am. The challenge is to keep holding that door open, to not close it behind me, to take a sledgehammer to its edges until it's wide enough for everyone. Womanhood is too expensive a category to be defined by limited parameters, no matter how it's marketed. Yeah, we're AMAB and we don't pass as any kind of femme like 99% of the time, but that means we can hide and presume masculinity. That's fair. We don't necessarily hide and presume masculinity, we just get it. And we used to correct people a lot more. Not so much now. But we used to always be out with other trans people. Particularly, we had a lot of trans masculine people in our lives. and we felt safe around them, and we felt protected. And we don't feel as safe anymore. It feels like, not even feels like, we did lose a lot of community around the time of the pandemic, and we still haven't, at least in a flesh space sense, got it back, and that's really scary. Capitalism feeds off this ideal woman, but it didn't strictly create her. She's an outgrowth of all of us, a golem created over millennia by an ever-shifting set of thoughts on what it means to be a woman. To be a trans woman is perhaps to be more aware of this odd set of expectations, of the way you probably don't need that pink razor but want it anyway. But it's not to be uniquely aware of those expectations. I'm an assimilationist not because I have failed to examine my choices or the options afforded me under capitalism, but because when I find myself affirmed by my family, my friends, by random strangers, I realize how deeply intoxicating it can be to love your life. What a novelty this is, to fight and fight and fight and discover the simple beauty of actually living your life you merely occupied before. Thank you, Emily Todd Van Der Werf. This is actually funny because all this was written in 2020. This has been dropped in the Discord already. Feel free to read it. I'll drop it in chat right now. Ooh, excuse me. So this article definitely made Drizzle feel weird when Fair read it, and I definitely understand the struggle. And I mean, it doesn't make me feel much better because I'm not afforded the privileges that this woman is. Like I said, black and don't pass super well, but part of me not passing super well is partially because of being black. We have to deal with that generally, and it's part of the reason why we don't want to go outside a lot. It definitely has a lot to do with our agoraphobia, and when like the Black Lives Matter protests has started up, and like we had already lost that community and didn't feel like there was anyone we could go to. Like, we couldn't be like, oh yeah, I don't feel safe, can you walk to the store with me? We didn't have that. To name one thing. And we did have relative privilege compared to the partner we had at the time, who was trans, but also black, but darker than us. We got light skin privilege, and we still do. We are black, but we aren't seen as like the optimal black threat. And especially if we want to quote unquote hide in masculinity, we can hide in a very nerdy, non-threatening masculinity. Which is ironically how we got used to being treated, similar to how we got treated as a girl later on. Because people treated us like a child in some ways. Some people infantilized us and we liked it. And some people treated us in like a way that was notably not how they treated other quote unquote masculine people. But we didn't recognize that how similar that was to being treated like a woman until we transitioned. But despite that, it was still different. We still remember when we came out to one friend in particular, and the first thing they did was give us a head pat. and 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 once we felt these two feelings, it's like there's two wolves inside you. One wants to bite this bitch's hand off, and the other one's like, pets, give me more. And it's just like, god damn it. It's such a it's such a thing. And shit, we came out to someone today, one of our neighbors. We were sharing phone numbers, and they were like, "Oh, I usually put an emoji next to people in my phone. What do you want as your emoji?" And our fucking ass was like, "Snowflake, please." And it's like, any particular reason why? It's like, kind of just want to reclaim it, since being trans and autistic and stuff is full of a lot of social pushback about how we're like, you know, a special snowflake. So it's just like, I'm very unique. Make me a snowflake, you know? We've been pretty anti-assimilationist in the past. We've outright called people who live stealth like class traders, essentially. And of course people have talked to us about not just, actually, we don't think anyone has ever countered us when we made those assertions about like living their best life and it just being a result of that, or just the inherent privilege of like just generally passing, even if they don't try very hard. Most people push back in the "I do it for protection" sense, and it's hard to like have that conversation even now, because it's like, the thing is, what about me, right? And it's like, and in saying that, am I pushing my individualism of my vulnerability to transphobia, or am I pushing the nature of solidarity? It's not really a compromise for me because I have no choice. But someone who passes is definitely losing something if they are out and proud. If they make themselves visibly trans. Although there are plenty of people who pass, who, if they wear, say, a trans pin, unless they're wearing a pronoun pin, and sometimes even then, they'll just be seen as a cis trans ally. You might get lucky that way. It's an incredibly complex issue. Thanks for the healthcare. I'll stretch in a second. I miss those easy bake oven Blues Clues, blueberry muffins. Oh god. Don't get me started on blueberry muffins. Yeah, it's a tough nut to crack, but we do get where those feelings come from. And I think at the point we're at now, especially after reading this article, we recognize that it's not a simple equation, and that people do have to live their life. And we're always going to have some amount of like very least emotional conflicts with people who can hide, quote unquote hide, because it's also a pressure, because we don't think that it's like a zero-sum game either. Someone who's assimilationist can't be it. The whole invisibility thing. If they do decide they want to support trans people, then they might lose that privilege. Of course, as a white trans person, there is inherently always going to be an amount of privilege, but that doesn't mean that the person's not going to suffer. And it doesn't mean that their suffering's not valid either. We try to give people a certain amount of grace, and we do take it by a case-by-case basis on a person's circumstances and attitude about it. And we don't expect any random trans person to be an activist. But also in that whole thing we were talking about before, where it's like, oh yeah, like, what if I become a communist just because I'm trans? It's like the thing about like the politicization of trans identity is that trans people have been politically under attack forever and continue to be. So unless you have the relative privilege to not care, then like you have, I mean, even if you have the relative, even if you have privilege to not care right now, that doesn't mean you won't have skin in the game eventually, especially with the way things are going. So we try to be as fair as we can to people, while still like hopefully pushing people to recognize that they should try to do something if they can. And the more people that do something, the easier it will be to push back against these systemic forces. But it does take a lot of concerted effort. Just walking down the street with like a "I'm trans" t-shirt is not going to fundamentally change the entire world. Though I do know that being out and proud made other people around us in neighborhoods we used to live in feel that they had the permission to be out and proud. And then it wasn't, oh, there's this one trans girl in the neighborhood. It was, there's a lot of trans people in this neighborhood. So even if there wasn't a concerted effort to be like a trans community in some of the neighborhoods we used to live in, there was an understanding that trans people lived here, and it was harder to push us out or discriminate against us for that reason. And I know that for some people, especially people who like are very binary and in their presentation and their attitude and stuff, that to a degree, like any sort of resistance won't help them personally, but only help the community. It's like, empathy is important, right? Okay, we must have come in just before the, oh no, what if I become a communist because I'm trans? Concern, because what the fuck? Yeah, you must have came in right before. We've been trans. We have a lot of thoughts on the concept of how long we've been trans. We won't get into right now, but we've been transitioning for almost 6 years. Actually, probably longer than that now. Closer to 7, I think. Regardless, when we first started being around openly trans people, we noticed a lot of them were communists. And of course, there were a lot of memes about being communist, and we didn't understand the connection between leftism and being trans, or the tendency to be trans and left. And although we didn't have anything inherently against being communist or being like radically left, and of course we're radically left now, we used to have worries that there was something about the trans community, and of course there might be peer pressure involved with us that would lead us to identify with communism even if otherwise we wouldn't. So we were just really worried, not realizing why a lot of queer people, even not just trans people, veer so left, we got the lived experience that pushed us into radicalization, actually. Being trans helped radicalize us. Like, for real, for real. We know so many members of the ADBL, trans, and non-binary communities who do blacksmithing, including us. And it's amazing. Like, you go, boo. Make those swords to slay oppressors. Okay. So it comes back to the fear of societal pressure. Yeah, I guess it does. We totally understand how you had that experience. I'm glad. And I guess there's the other part of it was growing up black, but being the most left part of our family, or at least the family we live with growing up. Wow, just being like liberal leaning left without even knowing what that really meant yet. Like the year we were first able to vote, we were the only person in our house that voted, and everyone else was like, it won't matter. And although our parents weren't Republicans, they were very conservative. And older, especially boomer conservative black people are not weird. We had to deal with a lot of homophobia and stuff growing up. So once we were free of that, like, we still had some stuff to unlearn also. There's something inherently gender about wielding a big fuck off sword or battle axe. There really is. And for the sake of it, yeah, honestly, recognizing us being trans helped us shed our remnants of liberalism and fully adopt leftism as just like the fucking obvious moral thing to do. Yeah, it's much more like a no-brainer now. And we try to remember how we used to be when we see someone struggling with that. Or struggling with the labels part of it, especially.